In this lesson, we're going to learn about author tags. Now, there are a number of common author tags that we will look at in the code, and they will get us things like the name of the author, various links, different meta information about them that they have saved in their profile, things like the avatar URL, a link to edit them, and then various different ways of listing multiple authors on your site. Now, before we jump into the code, there's two particular ones that I want to mention, and that is the author meta and get the author meta. And these are the functions that will allow you to pass a parameter and get a specific author field in their profile. Here are some of the common fields that you'll often want to access with the author meta. Things like the ID, different login information, usernames, maybe their email, how they want their name displayed, breaking that down into first or last, or how they've chosen to their nickname, their user description, and then their user level. So these are helpful fields, and as we'll see, some of them can be a little bit confusing what they actually represent or how they're different from others. So we'll look at these out in the code and break them out a little bit more. So if we come into the code for this theme, what I'm going to do is come into my byline, and I've added a few things here. You can see I've added the author posts, the author link, and the author posts link. So what this is going to give us is the name of the author, how many posts they have, a link to their website, and then a link to their actual archive page. And I listed these out because they can be a little bit confusing because they all have very similar names: author posts, links, or link, and then posts link. But they all do slightly different things. So let's hop over onto the front end and see the result of what we get here. Okay, so on the front end of my site, we can see we have the name of the person, how many posts they have, their name again, which in this case is not a link, but down here is a link that's going to link off-site because this is actually to their URL that they have listed on their site, not their profile page or author page here. And then the next link over is going to be the link where we could click and actually get into the author archive, where there's some more stuff we'll look at in a moment. So again, that's the difference between just the author name, the author posts, which is the number of posts, the author link, which is going to be a link offsite to their profile, and then the posts link. So again, that's what we have here, and you could play around with it and figure out which works best for your site and which you need and which you don't need. So now if we drill down to the author template, we're going to look at what all of the different common fields are for the author meta. So we can see at the top that we have display name, and what display name correlates to is if you're to edit your profile, you have the option to display name publicly as, and then choose the variation of first name, last name, username, etc. So whatever they choose in their profile, if they have access to it, that will be what shows up with display name. So next down we have the user login and user pass. Now these are what they use to log into the site. So it's usually their username and then password, but not their password in plain text. It's going to be hash or encrypted somewhat, so you're not seeing the full version of their password. Now you also have nice name, which is often the same thing as a login, unless you have something like email login enabled, then you might have slightly different variations for user login or nice name. Next, coming down, we have their email and URL, which is pretty straightforward. Then we see display name again, which is the same as we saw at the top, already looked at, and then nickname. So let's hop back over into the admin and see what nickname is. So you could see here that they have a field for nickname, and this could just be whatever they have assigned, often their first or last name or a combination of the two. And then coming down the road here, first name and last name should be pretty straightforward. Description again, this is a profile field where they can edit depending on the front end or back end, depending on the theme or their setup. And then finally, user level. So user level is not going to give what you might expect. You might expect that you're going to get back something like editor or administrator. However, what you get instead is a number. So level 10 relates to administrator, and there's a couple of these block levels. Editor is going to be any of these. Level 2 would be author, level 1 would be contributor, and 0 would be subscriber. So the reason for this has to do with some of the older history of WordPress and how things used to run behind the scenes, and you could get this value back and basically figure out what they have. Now, if there are custom roles set up, that might change it a bit, but it should be pretty straightforward what these different numbers result to. And you could check out the link to look at that a little bit more. And then finally on the list, we're using get user link. However, in order to get the user link, we have to get the user ID. So we're actually passing in get author meta and passing in the ID as well. Oh, we skipped over this one here. Get avatar, super important. So this is not technically author meta, but there is a field to get author meta, or I'm sorry, to get avatar, and you have to pass in get author meta ID to be able to pull in the ID of the user unless you have it another way. So we can see that all of these are using the format of the author meta and then passing in the different field name that they want as a parameter. Get avatar is a little bit different, and get user link might require us to pass in the ID as well that way, and then we're going to echo out edit here so that it could be edited later on or translated, and that is basically the common author tags that you have. So once again, on the front end, we could see that we have the username, all of that, the email, their site, all this information as we would expect, and you could use this to build out a pretty cool author page or author bio inside of a post or wherever you decide that we need it. Now you'll also notice over here on the sidebar we have a few other things. We have the list authors and the drop-down authors, and I'll show you each of these in action, but I'm probably going to lean towards suggesting you use list authors over the drop-down authors unless there's really a reason for you to do otherwise. So let's just take a look at this code real quick. What I'm going to do is come down into my sidebar.php, and you can see here that we've got our list of authors using WP list authors, so really simple just to list those out, and then drop down authors. And this is a little bit more complicated. We just have a sample form set up, and this is straight out of the Codex documentation for WP dropdown users. It shows you how to create a simple form and submit it and get back the correct author page. Now to look at these two on the front end again, you can see if we click the drop down and click view, it does display the correct page, but it also shows submit view up here, which is not probably very attractive. So I wouldn't suggest using drop-down authors unless you really have a reason to and have a way of interacting with that form or an idea of how to approach that. Otherwise, list authors may be super helpful, and you may also be wondering, hey, why wouldn't I do this with a widget? That's also possible, but if you needed to hard-code it and didn't want that something that was changing on the site, then that hard-coded approach, the way we looked at it here, may have been the smart way.